What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast.
If you want to be successful, look inside.
We don't like sitting in the discomfort.
Then all of a sudden that day came when I got $20 and 2 free drinks to do a show, and I was like, oh shit, here we go, baby. You know?
Thank God she hasn't caught a chicken yet, because she'll tear her head off.
Don't be soft.
That patience is key.
If all my friends are winning, then it's going to make me want to win more.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest. He's all the way in California. This guy is a tremendous entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and author of the Miracle Mentality book. Please help us welcome the one and only Tim Storey. What's up, brother?
Oh, I like that. I could almost hear the fans like,
He's gotten pretty good at that.
Right? I get the brownie points. I love when I get the brownie points for the intro.
that was good. Now, I hope you guys have been tested and stuff. You're pretty close, kind of like.
Oh yeah, we're pretty good. I mean, I think we're pretty much recluse when we're not together.
Right?
You know, it's like we're working the podcast, do our own business stuff. That's pretty much it for us.
We've been back and forth trying to even hang out, like outside of the podcast. This has been crazy. It's like, hey, can you hang out this weekend? You're like, yeah, let's do it. And then, got this family thing going on. I got this thing going on. So
yeah. Luckily for him, I get tested quite a bit. So I think he just used me as like the pawn. Like if I'm positive, then he knows he's probably screwed. But as long as I'm good, he's good.
You guys look safe. I think just from just looking at you look very, very safe in quarantine.
Well, health is wealth, my friend. You know, we try to keep the body and the mind very healthy. Usually keeps us resilient.
So how are you been? How you been out there in California? How things been going for you? How are you feeling?
It's a different day. You know, for me, I've been traveling nonstop since I was 20 years of age. And so, you know, I've been to 75 countries of the world. To do that, you got to get on airplanes. So it's been weird to have everything shut down in March. So from March to now, from last March, I've only traveled like 4 times.
Wow.
So that was like a trip. And, you know, even on the speaking front, I had like 37 conferences that I was supposed to do that all got canceled. But it was a good time now to renew and reboot. And I've done better even financially this year than I have in years past. Because, you know, you always find a way to do things.
That's amazing. It's so funny because the more and more we talk to different guests and even, you know, some entrepreneurial friends that we have, you know, we keep hearing that answer like, hey, believe it or not, we've done much better financially during this pandemic, obviously depending on the field you're in, more than ever. You know, and I think that it's really changing the name of the game of how we're approaching business, our life, the way we do things, and making us realize, too, like, hey, there's opportunities in many other ways within our own businesses that we can actually use to be able to scale. So I definitely would love to dive in a little bit about that. You know, how has it been that you've been able to have a great financial year? What are some of the things you've been able to do that have changed from your typical day-to-day back in the day?
Yeah. So as you guys know, I teach a lot on the comeback, turning your setbacks to comebacks. So what I find is sometimes we have these things called life interruptions. And so an interruption is a disturbance, but here's a cool thing, because we're all athletes. It also means interception. So I think COVID-19 in this pandemic is like an interception. It's like Tom Brady marching down the field and a cornerback, intercepts the ball and goes the other way. So I think COVID-19 has been like a life interception for a lot of people. And whenever there's an interruption, I have my little notes right here I just wrote down, there's always like a delay. The second D, there's sometimes a denial. Okay. And then thirdly, sometimes there's a detour. But the detour can lead you to better places. Mm-hmm. And so this is wild, guys, because of, you know, doing all these really major stages for all these years. You know, I miss that energy. But I tell you what I found is like a home life. I realize I have neighbors. I even like wave at them now. I got to throw the trash. I realize there's a Whole Foods down the street. So like this detour has detoured me into a more quiet place, a place of peace. I don't think I've been this funny since I was like 20. Because I'm known as being funny, but I don't think I've been this funny since I was 20. Because I didn't think I had given myself an opportunity to rest all those years.
I mean, rest is a super important thing. Something that we always talk about, you know, with the fitness side of things is like, if you're not resting, then you're not really allowing yourself to even make any progress. And I'm sure, you know, clearly you found the same thing with your business. When it comes to those detours that you were talking about, how do you, as best you can, try to navigate those in order to turn them into something that is positive instead of something that might be distracting you or limiting your ability to grow?
Great question. I think definitely that's what you need, the power of partnership with the right people. That there's wisdom in the multitude of counselors. And for my life, what I would do is I would like see what other guys were doing that are in my world. And then I would ask other people's opinion. And then one guy said to me, "Hey, Tim, those same companies that are inviting you are still going to need you, but maybe you change what your speech is going to be about." And when I started teaching on the comeback, like for companies, man, I just started getting booked like ding, 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 ding. It was like Wheel of Fortune at Las Vegas. And so I think in the detour, one of the things you need to do is ask for advice. It's almost like if you get lost in a strange city, just ask them like, "Hey, do you know where that is?" And that's what I did. And I found new direction.
It's tough for people to ask for advice though, right? Like it's something that requires you to, you know, peel back your ego a little bit and show some of that vulnerability. You know, why do you think it is so difficult for most people to feel comfortable asking for advice?
I think that's mostly in men.
I'd agree.
And I think part of that is the way we've been trained. So like, let's even not even go to your guys' dads, but even like your grandfathers. In that era, it was like the guy had to know what to do. Because the idea of being a father, because, you know, I'm a therapist, is the father is supposed to do three things: guide the family, guard the family, and govern the family. And so back in like your grandparents' era, like usually in most cultures, like the grandpa knew what was up. Like there was a snowstorm, he knew what was up. There was a fire, he knew what was up, right? And so he wasn't like asking his wife, "What should we do?" or his kids. So I think that the age that you guys are, it's changed, where men are learning to take off the mask and realize it's smart to admit that sometimes we don't know. And as you say about peeling that onion, I find a lot of freedom in that. I'm not afraid to ask. Like, I don't know everything about Bitcoin. I will ask somebody. I don't know everything about what you guys do. I'll ask somebody. So I'm cool with asking.
I want to go back to something you said about, you know, now the men peeling off the mask, which I do think it's really important. And especially allowing us to like, take some of that weight off our shoulders and make us realize like, hey, we don't have to put that front every single time. But I do want, on the flip side, I do want to bring this up, especially I'm sure you would know, in you being an expert in your field. I also see a big trend where there is a lot of men that are now, their masculinity is being brought down. And there's a lot of men that are losing confidence or some of that power energy that would drive them to do certain things because of the world that we're living in, some of the environmental change, whether you agree or disagree. But that's something I feel that I see. What are your thoughts about that? And how do you think is the best way to handle that?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure on men that's at a very, very strong level. And like, for instance, with the pandemic, if a guy is married, and let's say if his wife doesn't work, even if she doesn't say it to him daily, she's looking at him daily saying, "What are we going to do?" Okay. So if he doesn't know the answer, man, that's pressure, right?
Mm-hmm. We both done that.
Okay, so let's say, and then even if that man tries a new endeavor and doesn't work that quick, like all at once, that's new pressure. But I could see that you guys have a camaraderie with you two. And man, I need my male friends. Like, I got really cool male friends that are my age, younger, older, that we like text each other, you know, give each other advice. We're there for each other. And so I think it's just like a team. When like the Lakers won the championship in the NBA this past year, you see them all celebrating and popping champagne together and all that, because they know what it's like to be in that bubble, and they knew what it was like to just bust their butts and practice and all that. So I think it's important for men to gather together, even if it seems awkward at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely can seem awkward at first if you're around us. You know, we're pretty we're pretty awkward. But you're 100% right. I think, you know, men definitely do need to stick together, and this is an interesting time, I think, for especially like our generation, because we're kind of in that in between. I think where, like, you know, at least I know personally, and Mendez will probably agree with me. Like, I still kind of like that, you know, role that you mentioned as like our grandfathers. Like, I like those
Yes.
three G's, right? But I know other people who maybe want to take a more, like, you know, for lack of a better term, feminine role, right, in their relationship. And that's fine. But for those of us that want the more alpha role, it seems like, oh, well, how do I voice that to my significant other, to my friend group, or to whoever I'm talking to without coming off like chauvinistic or, you know, like mansplaining? I feel like it's a pretty awkward time for us.
So I think I have a good perspective on this. I think the key is you don't have to tell everybody you're asking for advice. So, like, I'm not telling my public, or sometimes even my sisters, or even my mother, or maybe even my kids, that I have certain men in my corner that I look to, because they may know a little more about certain situations than me. So that's not a bad thing. It's like this. So let's take professional baseball. That most of those great hitters have hitting instructors. So when their swing goes off and they go from hitting 310 to 260, and now they start getting in their head, they got those older cats that are now in the Hall of Fame, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That are like walking them through. That's what I got. Like, I got the Quincy Joneses of life that are in the Hall of Fame, and I lean on those cats. That's smart to do.
I think it's so spot on what you said, because it is who you surround yourself with. And I know that's something we talk about all the time, and we mentioned our last podcast with our last guest is, you know, you are who you hang out with, right? And when you hang out with the right people, you're going to get the right feedback, you know, and I think that that's one of the most important things, is to get that constant feedback or, you know, advice from the right people, so you can start doing things differently, or steering yourself in the right way, or just add on top of what you're doing to make certain things better, or fill in those gaps that might be missing. So, you know, I'm a huge believer, you know, when you do have that person that you find, you got to keep them, right? When you find that right person, you got to keep them. Because I do feel like a lot of times, like, people find somebody, whether it's a relationship, a partnership, a friendship, and sometimes they tend to take it for granted and they let it go, you know. And they don't
you got to be careful, because there's going to be battles in any relationship, whether it be between two brothers, between a father and a son, and between two hosts like you guys. There's going to be differences, and that's okay. And so listen, if Kobe and Shaq had stayed together longer, come on, man. Oof. It would have just kept going. I mean,
definitely six. There would have definitely been six.
This is all real stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at even like bands, like rock bands, like you look at Journey from the 80s, the reason they broke up is because they could not get along. And same thing with the Beatles. And so think about the longevity and the more that some of these teams could have done had they worked through their differences and realized how much they damn needed each other.
What do you feel is that really that one big thing that sticks out, that most people, why most people can't work through their differences? What's that number one thing do you think that most people
know for a fact, because this is what I do for a living. So I life coach, you know, predominantly 80% men, and most of them, you know, play at high levels. It's ego. Mm-hmm. It's ego. And so I think that it's like a bunch of lions walking around. And like, you know, the one guy doesn't want to be wrong. But I think you got to check your ego at the door. Like, you know, there was that famous song, "We Are the World." Okay. And that was, you know, done for this whole Live Aid thing. It was done by Quincy Jones, Lionel Richie, and Michael Jackson. Okay. So they brought in the best singers we have, like anywhere from a Bruce Springsteen, as you guys know, you know, all the way to Elton John, to, you know, Stevie Wonder. And so Quincy Jones had a sign that was made, "Leave your ego at the door." Like when you come through this door, yo, realize there's a lot of other lions in here. And then they were able to collaborate and just create magic. So how much more magic could we create? Because we're talking about men for a minute today. As men, if we could just leave our egos at the door sometime,
Yeah.
and just be cool with what the other guy's doing.
So when would you say, because ego is one of those words where it's like, I think it always tends to be a bad thing, right? Which most likely, if it's inflated, it doesn't help you. But when is it good to have a little bit of ego? When do you feel like, when you coach somebody, when is it good to have a little bit of ego, and then when do you need to shut it off?
Okay, so ego in itself is good, but ego has to be managed. Guys, this is like brilliant crap. You got to manage your ego. And so ego is good because your ego can stop you from dying. Like there are people that had been diagnosed with cancer, and something in them said, hell no, it's not my time. And that's not always their mindset, it's their ego saying, no, I got things that I'm not done with. Or they go bankrupt. And the healthy ego says, get back up. They get knocked down in boxing. The healthy ego says, get back up. So you can have the healthy ego. So the key is that you have to make sure, because you guys are in the health and nutrition, you have to make sure you keep your ego healthy. And part of the way I keep my ego healthy is by acts of service. I'm constantly looking for somebody to serve that I have no agenda, that I get nothing out of it.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking to one of our last guests, I think, as well, and you know, we were talking about when you are solely out there to seek money, right? Usually, it's pretty difficult to get, but when you seek to serve others, money comes in
No doubt.
in droves.
No doubt. I think it's a law in the universe, you know, whether people believe on the God side or just the universe did it, but it is either sowing and reaping, which would come from more spirituality, or people could call it karma, whatever you want to call it. There's no doubt about it. You reap what you sow. And so the question is, I do this thing, guys, called the law of the harvest, that everybody wants to harvest, but they're not willing to do the principles to get the harvest. The law of the harvest is you got to plow the ground, you got to plant the right seeds, then you got to continue to water the seeds, and then you get the harvest. We live in a culture where everybody wants to harvest now, but they didn't plow, plant, and water.
What does that look like for? Can you give an example and kind of dive into, you know, how you would coach someone through that process?
Yeah, 100%. So let's say this. I feel that like people in their current state usually are like looking over the fence at their neighbor and seeing what their current state is. And they say, well, look at that guy. He's doing more, or he's more lean. He's more fit. He has more money, that kind of thing. I say, build your spot and life will put the spotlight on your spot. Okay, watch how powerful this is. When I was 15 and a half, I was a dishwasher, but I was trained by my mother as a kid not to do a halfway job. So even dishes, man, I was like a dishwashing machine, because that's just the way my mother trained us, because we were lower income, but never lower class. Big difference.
I love that.
So when I was,
that's great.
That's a powerful statement.
I'm stealing that from you.
Yeah. And so, you know, I was raised in Compton, 7 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. And then one day I end up in Beverly Hills with, you know, 7 bathrooms and an elevator. Woo. So how do you get from one to the other? Okay. So here's what I think is part of my deal is, as a dishwasher, working for Mr. Anderson, who entrusted me to do the dishes, he had put his hard-earned money to get this restaurant. It was a nice restaurant. He gave me a shot at 15 and a half to be the dishwasher. So I did those dishes with everything I had. I was just plowing, planting, watering. So the cook, who was only 7 steps away, that's so cool, Mickey, 7 steps away, lazy Mickey. And I ran into him. I told him, Mickey, I use your story all over. He goes, I don't give a damn. Go ahead. Call me lazy Mickey. So lazy Mickey, because he changed. But at that time, he was lazy Mickey. He used to say to me, Tim, why are you doing those dishes like that? Slow down. He goes, you're not the owner. This is a true story. And I didn't even say anything back. I just smiled. But man, I did those dishes like I did own the place. Mr. Anderson saw me, gave me a promotion, dishwasher to busboy. I just keep getting promoted in life because I do the duty like I own the place.
Getting promoted in life. I love that. It's so crazy, but it's just, when you think about it too, when you run your own business, some people want to already be the promoted CEO and everybody else does everything, but don't realize that you have to go through the bullshit in your own business because you need to experience what your employees or future employees are going to be doing, and you have to have had mastered all those steps before you can actually title yourself the CEO. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize that. And that was something that, you know, even me early on, I was like, man, you know, how cool would it be to have that, you know, CEO or owner of my business title. But, you know, when it hit me, I was like, man, but I can't own that position on that marker unless I actually went through these steps. And when I went through them, it makes you so humbled to realize, man, like this is what it really takes to then own this title and then realize, okay, this is what my team has to do and execute in every single day because I've been through this, so I understand it. So I love that, you know, the owning, you know, going through promotions in your life, because I feel like you have to go through that in your own with your business.
Yeah, I like how you're thinking with that. I was with a guy who opened up a new restaurant, and because of COVID, it just kept being delayed. And so they had the grand opening last week. And as we were walking through the restaurant, you know, there were now people in it because it was open. And someone had dropped a napkin in the middle of nowhere, and he just picked it up and held it. And then he walked by another area, and it was weird. Someone had dropped a fork. He just picked it up, didn't say anything. He didn't go to one of the waiters or somebody like, who's dropping crap everywhere? And I said, let me just give you an observation. I said, I've been around you 25 years, and I see you do that at every establishment you have. No wonder he has so many. But see, he started from the bottom, right? And it's now ingrained in him just to do the job. So that's the great thing about being a utility player, like guys like us. I could play any position and I'm still cool. So if I'm the biggest, highest in the room, you know, to quote the song, fine. But if I'm just a dude that's supporting the highest guy in the room, I'm cool with that too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've always said I'd rather be the glue guy than the superstar, right? Because then I always have a job. Yeah. You know, there's always something that I could be doing to help, you know, like you said, either facilitate the growth of someone else or facilitate my own growth. There's always some little thing I could be doing rather than like, you know, in our world, there's tons of people who want to be like the kettlebell guru, right? Or like the mobility guy or the runner. Like I'm the marathon. Like I always try to tell, especially young trainers, young coaches, right? It's like, there's nothing wrong with being someone who's generally good at everything, but not great at necessarily one specific thing early in your career, right? You don't need to be the expert early in your career. You need to be a professional at every little aspect. Right. So that way, you know, as you start to get, you know, further in your career, you can start to, you know, get into these niche areas and start to really drive your expertise that way based off a need. more than want.
I like that a lot.
It's like they said on ESPN the other day. LeBron James became the best manager of his own team on the All-Star game.
Yes, yes.
And he scored the least points.
And you could see he was enjoying himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that when you start to check your ego, to go back to ego, and you begin to manage your ego, then you're okay with your other friend's success. And the way I look at it, and I think you guys will like this illustration. I have a cousin named Esther, and she used to love puzzles, but she would get those big puzzles that were like really difficult. But when I would come over, because at that time I was probably like 9, 10, 11, she'd get like a mid puzzle, and we'd listen to Motown records back in the day of vinyl. I mean, I just love that sound, right? And so we would put it out on this wood floor, and we would do a puzzle while we were listening to Motown. And I remember one time there were 4 pieces missing from the box, and she's like really together. She became later a designer in life. So she knew exactly that she did not lose those pieces. The manufacturer did not put those pieces in. And it was terrible because we had everything done, but 4 pieces missing. So I've come to realize in what I do in life, I'm just a piece of the puzzle. So, man, if Denzel is making movies, cool, Denzel, that's make movies, okay? If you guys just keep shining bigger, brighter, better, that's your part of the puzzle. You know, I do what I do. I'm a comeback coach. I'm a writer. I'm a humanitarian. Let me be the best at being my part of the puzzle.
You know, we mentioned you being an author at the beginning of the podcast, and you obviously have your book, The Miracle Mindset. Is understanding that in the broader picture of things, you really are just that piece of the puzzle. Is that part of the miracle mindset? Like, what made you write this book, I guess, is where I want to lead into this. And how did you come up with the miracle mindset?
Yeah. So what happened is, years ago, I'm going to give you a story of Walt Disney. In the 30s, Walt Disney walked into an amusement park, and he said to his friend, it was just him and a friend, and he said, I'm going to build my own amusement park someday. And I don't think it was ego. I think it was like he was destined to do it, okay? So again, what if his friend would have said no, right? So he tells his friend, I'm going to build my own amusement park, but he says these words, but mine's going to be different, better, and more magical. 3 words, different, better, more magical. Now, if I was to life coach you guys, I think since you were little that you wanted to do magical things. Like young guys think about doing stuff. They see somebody doing something and they want to do it. And so Walt Disney thought different, better, more magical. Watch how cool this is. 1955. He opens up Disneyland for a cost about $18 million, which is pretty low nowadays. But before he did that, there were delays, denials, like we talked about, and detours. He was turned down so many times by banks, turned down by people who said, I'm not going to sell this land. But he kept on pushing through, built Disneyland, different, better, and more magical. And so this book, The Miracle Mentality, is about how to regain your magic, because you had it at one point, and some people have lost it, how to regain it, how to align yourself with it again, and then how to be a miracle releaser so we could change this world.
That is beautiful. You know, I love how you mentioned regain your magic. Because it makes me go back and you start thinking about your childhood and when you were a little kid, of all these imaginations and all these things that you wanted to inspire to and do. And you really believe that, man, I'm going to go out there and conquer the world. And then you start getting life thrown at you and parents and friends telling you and your aunts and uncles, you can't do this and it's this and that, throw that dream out the window. And, you know, maybe you should think about something more structured and whatever it is. And then slowly that magic starts to disappear. And I think it's just amazing the way you frame that, regain that magic that you had once, because I am a believer that, you know, you do have it inside of you, you know, and you can
It's in
bring
you.
it, you can bring it out. You can bring it out, but with
It's
the
in
right
you.
people.
I've seen it all over the world. If you were to play the right beat, like a really cool beat, to a little kid in Iowa who's 4, and to the same beat to a kid in Ghana, whole different culture, same beat, they'll move their bodies. I'm really not even joking, man. Because there's like an animation in them. There's an animation. And I think that most humans, as they get older, they lose their animation. They lose the magic. And the magic is that extraordinary, the non-regular. And so we can get the magic back. Do you mind if I give you like 3 steps on how to get the magic back?
I was gonna ask you that question. I was gonna be like, how can we get that magic back?
Okay. So one thing that you got to do, and this is all in the book, is number 1, you got to wake up. Because here's what I think. I think a lot of us have been sleepwalking, and then you don't realize you damn lost the magic. You were so busy, or you were hit by so much, and then you were like plowing through, or you had 3 businesses, but so-and-so had 6, so you decided to get 7. So number 1, you need to wake up. So like wake up. Okay, wake up. So after you wake up, I have in my notes, then you got to become aware. Because it's one thing to be awake, but now aware. Like, where am I? Like, so now I'm paying attention. So you wake up, now, secondly, aware. Thirdly, you got to take inventory. This is what most people don't do. Because inventory means you got to look deep inside yourself and say, like, how is the clarity of my mind? How is my heart? How is my attitude? How is my spiritual life? How is my relationship with my kids or my family or my girlfriend or just being a single person? You know, how is my social life? How is my addiction or non-addiction life? So you have to take inventory. So you awake, aware, take inventory. And then the fourth thing, as we said earlier, you got to partner with the right people. Almost done. And out of partnering with the right people and getting awake, I find that people start to find the right plan. But we got to get the plan that's magical, not a mundane plan. A mundane plan is like normal, regular, status quo. Like, dude, where's your magical plan? Mm-hmm. So I think both of you guys are going to make magic in March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And as I say that, doesn't that make your spirit jump?
Woo!
Oh yeah.
Let's go.
Hype.
Like you felt that, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think too, you know, you hit it right on the head, right? With especially with these 2 main points, right? Taking inventory, especially personal inventory of what you have going on inside of your head, inside of your heart, and then using that to create a plan. And if you aren't being honest with yourself about where you are currently, where you want to get, where you want to head to, and what steps you need to take to get there, it's difficult to find that magical plan, right? You tend to get into a more mundane plan because you usually try to copy someone else's plan, right?
Yes.
Because
100%.
Because to you know, piggyback off of the point you made earlier, like looking over the fence at your neighbor and like, oh well, this plan that they have, like their 401k and their IRA and they're doing the, you know, Ted's got it so set up, and then you're like, well, I'm not Ted. Like my path is going to be very different than Ted's, than my neighbor's. So you know, once you can take stock in who you really are and where you want to head to, then you can really come up with a plan that can be inspiring, can be motivational, can allow you to make the progress that you want to make consistently time and time again.
Love it. And you know what? The key is, you know, more magical moments. And here's what I find interesting. So, you know, being that we're quarantined, sometimes I order food to my house. Man, I met some of the nicest people that deliver food. They're all happy and they're saying nice things to me. And some people recognize me because of stuff I do and they want to talk. Then the other day I walked out and the auto club guy was out there helping my neighbor. And he goes, hey, this is weird, but are you a guy named Tim Storey? I said, yes. And he goes, whoa, this is wild. This is weird, man. I like follow you. I like you. I go, tell me about you. He loves his job. He's the auto club guy. I go, dude, even like when you got to like pick up our cars and like tow them, he goes, yeah, I'm of service. Come on. He's found magic at the auto club.
That's amazing.
Magic is everywhere.
It's so funny because I love how you use the word magic, and some people use happiness, find your happiness, find this, but I love the word magic. Something about that, it's just more special. I just feel it's more powerful. I got a question for you. When it comes to regaining or building your magic up, how do you best do that when you are in a relationship with somebody or in a partnership with somebody and you see that the other person is maybe they're not wanting to build theirs, or they're lost in how to build theirs, and now it's spilling into yours and it's holding you back from you gaining your magic, or there's no support, you know what I mean? In the sense of they might not be supporting your magic. How do you best have that conversation? How do you go around that? When do you know how to let go, or do you know how to like communicate about it effectively so that way you're both on the same page? What's the best formula for that?
Great question. So in my book, I talk about making magic in relationships as well. It's part of one of the chapters, because here's what I personally believe. I think that sometimes we all want those kumbaya moments where we all find the magic together. Like, okay, mom and dad is going to take all 5 kids and we're all going to have a magical time. And it usually doesn't happen. 3 kids are pissed off or whatever. Same thing in a relationship. I find it very rare, guys, that both people like get the aha magic moment at the same time. So I think what you have to do is that you have to build your own magic. And so let me tell you how to do it. Number 1, you have to get clarity. Clarity is you got to just say, hey, number 1, do I have clarity in my mind, clarity in my life? And if not, how do I get it? So you get your own personal clarity, okay? The second thing is you got to find a place of calm and quiet. And so I think what happens with couples many times, let's say if you're trying to get your girlfriend or your wife to understand everything that you're going through. Man, I just read this book. Oh my God, it was so amazing. Or I saw this podcast, or I went and saw Tony Robbins, and they don't really quite get it, okay? What it could do is it could detour you from where you're supposed to be. So I think you got to get your own clarity, your own calm and quiet, and then you have to make your own personal changes. Here's what's powerful. And if you make the changes, you now become an example. So it's not always verbal with the things you say, it's the changes that hopefully the person that you're with will see the changes, and then they'll say, I want what he's having.
Love that. Absolutely love that. I think it's one of those things that I think a lot of people do struggle with, right? And I think you see a lot of it in relationships and friendships and partnerships where, you know, that tends to happen pretty often. Now, I know there's personal goals, you know, we have our own personal magic. How about when you're in a relationship with somebody and you guys are trying to regain that magic together, something that you have your relationship goals in? How do you go about that?
So you have to make room. So what I say in the relationship part of this book is that there are different categories of life that relationships go into. The mundane, which is the normal, the status quo. And that's where most great relationships stop. Guys, come on. You know, I life coach people in Beverly Hills. So you can see the most fancy people living the fancy lives. But dude, they've stepped into this mundane, the status quo, where they start to irritate each other. So the mundane can turn into the messy that fast. Mm-hmm. The messy is the disheveled. All of a sudden there's like messes in the relationship, and I didn't do that, or why'd you check my phone, or why is this going on? The mundane, the messy can turn into madness. It grows, okay? The madness is a chaotic. You see that in a lot of relationships as well. So what do I do, Tim Storey? You now have to make room for magic to land. Some people have made no room. If magic came in on a helicopter You made no room in your life for magic to happen. So how do I make room for magic to happen? You got to do dates with the person you care about. You got to do things they want you to do. If they want you to help around the house, do it. That's creating magic. Cleaning out the garage because you said you were, that's creating magic. Going on like a staycation, that's creating magic. Planning a great vacation after the pandemic, that's creating magic. Going to a concert she wants to do, that's creating magic. So as you land some magic, the magic would begin to grow. And all of a sudden I find that the other things begin to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I know this because I do a lot of couples coaching.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think it just ties back into what you were saying about, business and about your mentality as well. As like, it's not going to be these like hit you in the face aha moments. It's small wins, right? Small wins with your business, small wins with your own mental health. We always talk about it with your physical health, right? We're always looking for small wins. Same thing with your relationship. It's not going to be the, these big try and true like wedding day moments. It's going to be the thing where like you show up and clean the garage because you said you were going to.
You said it perfectly. It is the small wins. And so let's say your significant other doesn't see it. Well, if they don't see it, then you just keep being magical. And then if they don't see it and they don't see it, and 3 or 4 years or 5 years or 7 years later, then you got to have a conversation and say, are you open to like rising up out of an almost mundane life? Are you willing to like raise the vibration? And then that's when you have to, think about some possible other choices, which I'm not trying to get people separated, and especially divorce, because divorces could be very difficult.
Been there.
But yeah, and so have I. But I think that there are some people that are dating that the other person may never catch the magic. And you should really pay attention to that.
I mean, that was part of the thing that happened with me. I mean, now, my ex-wife is, doing much better in that department, at least from my own viewpoint. But, just she wasn't ready to grow and scale her life the way that I was ready for my life and our family's life to go. And it was just one of the things where it's like, we're not on the same page anymore, and we have to go our separate ways because we're not doing any good for each other.
And mine was pretty fresh too. Mine was pretty fresh. Didn't mean to cut you off, but mine was pretty fresh too. Me and my significant other, we split up about a little bit over 2 months now. And we have a little one in our 2-year-old, and it's one of those things where now it's like I'm trying to deal with the co-parenting thing and trying to show up and be the best version I can for my little one. And but it is rough, and I know a lot of people are going through it, and and I realize too that it has to do with the fact that you're saying like you can't stop your magic from growing, and I feel like on this end there was a lot of differences and there was a lot of different wants on both spectrums, and it just led to a completely different route. Not saying that that's where I wanted to go, but it's and who knows, maybe it could have been saved, maybe it could have not, but obviously that's why there's amazing people like yourself who hold people in and make them realize certain things.
Well, that makes sense. And the reality of the thing is and I'm not saying this is the case in your relationship, but I've known many, many relationships that looked over and it was just done. And then somebody began to do the work like we're talking about of creating magic in their life and also managing their ego, et cetera, et cetera. And then they begin to find a healthy compromise. I mentioned the word compromise in a show yesterday that I did, and the person said, "Ooh, I'm surprised Tim Storey is into compromise." I said, "Compromise is not always terrible, buddy."
He was surprised. I feel like you're the perfect person to be talking about that. You seem very level-headed.
Compromise is like smart. Compromise is like, let's share, let's figure this out. So I think that with your life, with the 2-year-old involved, that still what we work on now is you being a magical dad, okay? and you being a magical man, and you creating magical moments for your child. And, you know, you never know what happens on the other end in life. But right now we work on the areas where you can create the magic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're talking about this. It's funny because off podcast, I was talking to Josh. I'm like, man, I'm seeing now where my little one, she's starting to realize that there's something different going on. You know, not at the beginning, but now it's been 2 months after, and she'll go into my apartment and she'll be like, "Where's Mama? Where's Mama?" She'll look around the rooms, and then, you know, my ex would call me and she'd be like, "Hey, I'm FaceTiming you because, you know, Stella woke up this morning and she's just roaming around looking for you, saying, 'Where's Dada? Where's Dada?'" And she'll grab her phone because she knows that I'll FaceTime her. And it's just one of those things where it's now, man, you know, this is the patch where it hits you, where it's like, man, you know, I got to see how I can make that magic for my little one and best show up so that way she's the one that's not going to be getting the most damage or hurt out of this relationship, and showing up, you know, obviously me and my ex putting those egos aside and showing up for what's most important, which is our little one.
Yeah. And so I'm loving that you're sharing this, because a lot of the people that are watching this, we've all gone through breakups one way or another. And I think that there's ways to create magic still, as we said. So one, for your daughter, you're creating these magical moments, right? And you're always treating her mother in a really good way of honoring the mother. And as your daughter gets older, she's going to see that. So sometimes I will say, some couples should not get back together. Like, I know some couples that should not get back together, okay? And they are frustrated because of their kids. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 kids. So they may come back and try and come back and try. But maybe the magic they made was the kids. And sometimes they're better here, separated, living better whole lives, but co-parenting a magical child.
I like the way you put that. Really interesting.
Yeah, because another thing is culture tries to put shame on people. Like, oh, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And now you got a co-parent. Yo, oh man, didn't think that was gonna happen. You guys seem like you had it so together. Well, you know what? Life interruptions happen. And, you know, it takes 2 to be in the same plane. But the way I look at things again, let's have a paradigm shift and let's see your daughter Stella as magic, right? She's magical. She's forming. Mm-hmm. And you have the opportunity as a father to do that. And we'll believe that the mother will do the same.
I mean, I think you can really use that as a life lesson. What you just said, you know, across the board, whether you have kids or not, whatever you're going through in life is, you know, sometimes it's okay just to allow whatever is there to be the special part of your life, right? You don't have to seek other things all the time for that extra bit of gratitude, for that extra bit of gratefulness in your life, or love or affection, whatever it may be.
You got it down. I mean, like, for instance, I got a present 2 years ago that I forgot that I got it. And so I went into storage and I opened up this box, and it was a record player that played like the old music. Like I told you, I used to listen to Motown. Mm-hmm. So out of all the things I've got and gadgets and friends and all that, I'm like so into this. Because that sound is like the sound of when I was 7 and 8. You know, like if you play the records, it almost goes like a little bit, okay? Mm-hmm. So, man, you could find magic in the smallest things.
Yeah,
in the smallest things. And I love what you said. It's not just about going and attaining and getting, and when I get a jet and when I get a boom and get a bam. Oh, come on, guys. No, man, you can find magic just sitting around your house.
I love that. Before we wrap things up, Tim, I mean, you have dropped some absolute, you know, knowledge bombs on us and on our audience. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit about your story and your expertise.
I think before we wrap it up, I want to say, I really think that we can all say, both Josh and I and the audience, this was definitely a magical podcast.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Where can people reach out to contact you, to DM you, to talk to you, and to piggyback off of that, what would be the number one thing you want people to take away from your new book, The Miracle Mindset?
Yeah, I think that the way to find me, and you guys will put it in there, it's Tim Storey, STOREY.com. And I think the main thing is that you were created to be magical, that a utmost God did not create almost children. And when you really get that in your spirit, that, man, even though I was in this cramped spot in Compton, I was thinking big in small places. So no matter what small place you're in, think big. And let me tell you something about this book, The Miracle Mentality. It's like a movement. I was on Clubhouse one night and they threw a party for me, a book launch party. And we sold over 23,000 books in one night.
Wow,
people were buying
that's
100
incredible.
books at a time. One guy bought 2,500 books at a time. And then after that, a guy bought, not even counting the 23,000, after that, a guy bought 5,000 books at one time.
Jesus.
Because everybody knows somebody. Do you mind if I show the book?
Of
Go
course.
ahead. Go ahead.
Show it all
Everybody
you
knows
want.
somebody who needs this.
I love that.
I don't want to die without my miracle mentality. So this is a must. This
Great
is
pick
like
of
a
you.
Yeah,
must.
great pick.
Thanks. It's a must book. And if you don't like to read, then let me read it to you. You can get it on Audible right now, Amazon. It's a must. But buy it for somebody in your family that needs to get the magic back.
Love that.
That's great.
So Tim, to obviously we ended this on a tremendous note, but to seal it off with a cherry on top, I always like to ask this question: what is the biggest piece of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today in one sentence?
You've been born an original. Don't die a copy.
Oof,
That's fantastic. That's a great
absolutely
way.
love that.
Appreciate you coming on, Tim. Like I said before, tons and tons of value for our audience. I know they're going to get a great listen from this episode. Thank you again. If there's anything we can do to support you and the book and help you in any future endeavor, please just let us know. And
You guys are the best. You guys are one of my favorients now. You guys are great at this.
I appreciate
Thank you.
it.
I really appreciate
that.
What a privilege.
Thank you, guys. Make sure you go check out Tim,
Yeah.
Instagram, his website, pick up his new book. Anywhere books are sold, make sure you guys listen to it on Audible if you don't like to read. Until next time, everybody.
Get that magic.